Can you survive in a village where telling stories is a taboo? Can you? There was a village where the wind knew better than to whisper at night. It sat on the edge of the Sahel, where the sounds of the desert met the roots of the forest. And time seemed to pause, like it was holding its breath. This village had no storytellers, no drums after dusk, no tales told beneath the moon. Why? Because it has outlawed stories. All of them. The old ones about shape-shifting spirits, the lullabies about the sun's secret journey, even the whispered warning about ancestors who walked with flames in their hands. No one was allowed to remember. No one was allowed to tell. The elders claimed stories stirred the blood too much, that they made people to question too much, that they had once long ago nearly destroyed everything. And so, the village lived in silence. Even the children learned to stop asking questions. But one boy, called Bimbo, didn't. Bimbo was 12, sharp-eyed and sand-footed, with a head full of unspoken curiosity. He had grown up hearing nothing but the hum of chores, the scrape of pots and the dead quiet after sunset. But his grandmother, Ulima, had eyes that flickered like candle lights whenever the moon rose. She never told him stories. She wasn't allowed to. But sometimes, she hummed tunes that made his skin tingle. Old, airy melodies that felt like memory. One dry evening, while sweeping the floor beneath her woven mat, Bimbo's broom struck something hard. Out of curiosity, he reached down and pulled out a pouch wrapped in weather-worn goat leather. Inside was a carved wooden flute and a scroll tied shut with a brittle red wax seal. He hid it under his shirt and didn't say a word. But that night, as the winds howled louder than usual, he waited until the village was asleep. He crept behind the old baobab tree, the one nobody sat under anymore, and he played a single note on the flute. Behold, the sound that came out wasn't music, it was a voice. The wind stopped immediately. The leaves shivered like they had just been touched by an old friend. And then, out of the air itself, a whisper came. "You have awakened us," it said. Bimbo dropped the flutes out of fear. The scroll unfolded on its own. He watched symbols dance across it like ants in moonlight, forming the face of a woman with eyes like fire and hair like stars. She spoke in a tongue he didn't know, but somehow understood. She said, "You are the first in generations to hear us. The stories never died, they were buried, and now you have dug them up." From that moment, Bimbo's world changed. Animals started watching him like they knew him. The elders began to dream again, but feared it. And the night after, the baobab tree bloomed for the first time in 70 years. What has he awakened? The next morning, the village woke to a scent no one had breathed in years. the baobab blossoms. The elders gathered in tight silence, squinting at the pale flowers that clung to the bark like memories refusing to die. No one spoke of the tree blooming, but whispers returned, not from lips, but in glances, in the uneasy reading of footsteps, in the way birds began to circle Bimbo's compound like sentries. Meanwhile, Bimbo could not sleep. The voice from the flute haunted him, though not in fear, but in hunger. It called to something older inside him, something unspoken that lived in his blood like a drumbeat waiting for his song. That night, he returned to the baobab with the pouch, the flute paused warm in his hands. But it was the scroll that opened first this time, revealing a new shape, a map but not of rivers nor mountains, a map of songs, of echoes, of places where forgotten stories still homed beneath the earth. He noticed the mark glowing bright beneath the village, a buried chamber. Follow the roots, the whisper said, and the truth will bloom. So he did. By moonlight, he slipped past the goats and the guards, past the shrine stones and silent wash huts, to the foot of the baobab. He laid his palm on its back, and the back opened like a door. There was a passage beneath the tree, a spiral staircase of living wood, leading down into the dark. The air was thick with the scents of salt and ash. As he descended, torches lit themselves one by one, as if remembering an ancient ceremony. At the bottom, Bimbo found a door carved with thousands of tiny marks, not words, but wounds. Each one pulsed faintly like the heartbeat of something sleeping. He touched the door, and all at once he saw it. A vision, a memory that wasn't his. A time when stories weren't just told, they were alive. They walked beside people, danced in fires, took shape as creatures of air and clay, some healed, some destroyed. And once long ago, one story became too powerful, a tale of rebellion born from a child's imagination that burned through the village like wildfire, turning friends against friends, dreams against duty. That story was locked away, buried beneath silence, until now. The door cracked open, and the story looked up. It had been waiting. It had no eyes, no mouth, and yet it watched him. The story, if that is what it was, called in the center of the chamber, like smoke made solid, a shape of shadow and ember, rising and falling like breath. When Bimbo stepped closer, it paused once, and the torches in the chamber flared. Then it spoke, not with words, but with memories, flashes of a village full of music and myth, of storytellers whose tongues would weave rain from clouds, whose tales shaped crops, marriages, even war, of a boy not like Bimbo, who dreamed up a tale too large and too dangerous. A story about a world without elders, without rules, without fear. The story had spread like wildfire, and like fire it consumed. Children vanished into dreams and never returned. Masks carved ceremonies took on lives of their own. Trees began to whisper secrets meant for the gods. The elders have tried to forget, tried to kill it, but stories are not killed, they are buried. until someone remembers. You are like him, the voice whispered in Bimbo's bones. But you do not fear. That makes you dangerous. Bimbo swallowed. His hands trembled, but his eyes, they stayed sharp. I'm not afraid, he said. The shadow laughed. A low echoing sound that wasn't cruel but ancient. Then he stepped forward, not towards Bimbo, but into himself. And suddenly, he was not alone in his body. His skin felt it was humming. His heartbeat slowed, then doubled. His vision blurred, not doubled. He was seeing through his eyes and through the stories. Above him, in the world he had left behind, the baobab tree cracked down the middle. The village heard it. The elders ran, and Uli was already waiting. She stood barefoot in the sand, eyes closed, humming a tune no one had heard since the last time the story worked. A song older than silence. As the villagers gathered in fear, the baobab split open, and Bimbo emerged, glowing faintly, flute in one hand and new voice in the other. Because the story had chosen him not to destroy the village, but to finish what it started. When Bimbo stepped into the moonlight, the air bent around him with possibilities. The story was no longer just inside him, it moved with him, like a second shadow. His flutes gleamed like a knife made of memories. His eyes held the flicker of something old and burning. And when he spoke, the wind listened. The villagers backed away, mouths silent but eyes loud with fear. Only Ulima stepped forward. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled slightly, as if touching both pride and dread. Do you know what you carry? She asked. Bimbo nodded. I carry what you buried. Gasps ripped through the crowd as they stand in awe. The elders stepped forward, all in white, their robes catching moonlight like sails. The oldest, Okuru, raised his staff. That story nearly ended us, he said. It poisoned the minds of the young. It made them dream beyond their place. Bimbo looked up at him and said, maybe their place was never small to begin with. The crowd murmured. The ground beneath the baobab rumbled again, and then Bimbo lifted the flute. He didn't play it, he spoke into it, a single word no one understood, but everyone felt it, like a crack in the sky, a word carved in sound and truth. And the flame came, not to burn, but to reveal. From the base of the tree to the feet of the villagers, images rose like spirits from ash. The forgotten stories, the animals that once spoke, the rivers that used to laugh, the ancestors who walked with stars on their shoulders. A village where everyone, child, elder, wanderer, was allowed to dream aloud. Tears ran down Uli's face. The elders fell to their knees and the people saw what silence had caused them. And still, the story inside Bimbo was not done yet. Because this wasn't just about remembering, it was about choosing. The story is told in Bimbo now, not as a ghost, but as a cause, as a question. One that the village had buried, one they could no longer ignore. The baobab tree split open behind him, glowed from within, each rose pulsing with light, with memories. The scroll had turned to dust. The flute, now silent, felt warm in his palm. Before him, the people waited. Elders with eyes wet from truths returned. Children who had never had a bedtime tale. Farmers and weavers and potters who had lived without imagination for so long, they had forgotten what longing felt like. The story spoke inside Bimbo, not with answers but with options. You can return silence to them, it whispered. Close the roots again, seal the truth, and let peace remain in forgetting. Or you can give them back their fire. Bimbo looked at the elders, at Oli, at the bulbul tree, now blooming fully, its flowers dripping gold lights into the earth. He thought of the boy from the vision, the one who dreamed the story that almost destroyed humankind. And then he realized it wasn't the story that ruined the village, it was the fear of it. He turned to the crowd and spoke out loud and clear. We were never meant to live without stories. From behind him came a breeze, the kind that carries voices. And suddenly, the children began to speak. The little ones first, the older ones. Whispered fables at first, then forgotten songs, then stories they had dreamed in silence, ones they didn't know they had held inside. About animals who could vanish into wind, about skies that told fortunes, about heroes with names just like theirs. The people wept, laughed, and remembered. It was a roller coaster of mixed feelings, and the elders, they said nothing. But one by one they sat down beneath the blooming baobab tree and listened like students on the first day of learning. Bimbo didn't stay at the center. He walked out of the circle, flutes in hand, voice quiet, because he understood now. He was not the hero, he was the door. And now that the village had opened, the story could finally begin again. You see, just like this story, some stories are too dangerous to forget, but the most powerful ones are the ones we choose to tell again. Please, from today henceforth, share that story about your identity, about your origin, about Africa. Like this story, share this story, and do well to subscribe so that whenever we drop another of our African indigenous folklore stories, you'll be the first to see it. Thank you.